Welcome to another episode of the Impossible Life Podcast. I'm your co-host, Nick Surface, and I'm looking across at a man who recently took a psych eval, only to find the results inconclusive. That's right, friends, the former Navy SEAL. Garrett Unkelbach, a man whose brain is not meant to be studied, only experienced and appreciated.
You can't put me in a box.
Oh, don't we know it, man? Yeah, boxes beware.
And I'm not sure that psych eval was totally inconclusive. We've got some theories going.
Well, you gave it, yeah, and you may immediately you hear the voice of greatness on this podcast. Dr. Robi Sonderegger is with us again. I am so pumped that you're
and
here.
Finally in the studio.
In the studio. This is the first time we can look at you and not like the first episode we had. You remember we had so many technical difficulties because you were somewhere where the Wi-Fi was terrible. So you would say something, we would just be staring at you. It was
Well, it was only because like we knew Dr. Robi so well and could fill in the blanks that even worked.
Well, you know,
because from a like technical perspective, that was the worst episode we've ever done. We've never had a guest that was like every other word we could hear.
Yeah, when I edited it, I had to remove so many gaps because there were so many delays. But you
I had no idea. This is the first time I'm hearing this. This is fantastic.
You know,
that's the power of Riverside, though.
Yeah, that is the power. Yeah, shout out to Riverside. But so if you're sitting here, you're going, oh wait, who's Dr. Robi? Well, first of all, you're probably a new listener, and welcome because you're in for a treat. But if you want to go back and listen, Dr. Robi, there's a lot of firsts happening. So for those of you that don't know, Garrett and I are both very busy, which means that we're recording these in-person podcasts Sunday mornings at like 5:30 a.m. So Dr. Robi is the first person to ever be like, you know what, I'll show up in person at what turned out to be 6 a.m. So thank you, Dr. Robi.
Today's the day.
Today's the day. What a guy. And then also the first ever three-time guest, which I like. I feel like that's the right thing that you're the guy.
Right.
Because we love you, man.
We have coffee in hand. And I have to say, look, as an Australian, you know, coffee to Australians is what chess is to Russians. And we have a bit of an expression when it comes to coffee in America. America needs Jesus. But Garrett, I can tell you are hanging tight with the man because this coffee is actually quite good this morning, except for the little, you know, cup that you've given me. It's not very manly for a men's purpose podcast.
And Garrett's smiling because as he said, I gave you an espresso cup. If you would ask for a double or triple, I'd given you a better cup, which was basically like, be a real man, drink more caffeine.
I bit my tongue when I asked him, you know, for espresso. I said single, double, triple, and he said single. It was kind of sad.
He's like, oh, you're one of those. Well, you laugh, but like this guy, I've been with this guy and he's like, hey, like we're finishing up a double date with our wives and they're like, coffee? And I'm like, yep. And just like slam one down. I'm like, bro, are you serious? He's like, I metabolize caffeine very fast. I'll be asleep in 25 minutes. I'm like, all right. And then I check his Whoop score. I'm like, that's the truth. Anyways, wow. So Dr. Robi was first on with us in episode 47, man, which was like where he said one of your favorite things ever. We talked about gratitude, which was incredible. So for the new listeners, I'm not going to give him an intro because at this point, Dr. Robi is just a friend. He's not even like a guest of the podcast anymore. And then he was also on in episode 168, which was in December of last year. So like every December, this is like our tradition, have Dr. Robi on.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to your ears.
Tuning in from Cambodia, no less.
Yeah. Oh, yes, that's right.
So we thought this was early. That was like a 4 a.m. recording for me that was wild.
Well, you always pay the price. So and you talked about parenting. I remember that was our parenting. We did a 3-part series. You were number 2, and it was just incredible. So I'm so glad to have you back. Okay, so you're like, okay, great. You guys all really like each other. You've established that now. And we do really like each other. But why would we have a psychologist on? And by the way, you recently got upgraded in psychology. I know you were telling me about it because I publicly came out and said that you're my favorite psychologist. So I know that was pretty big for you. And you're welcome.
Now I've arrived.
Add that to the top of the accolades.
Yeah. There's a lot of letters after his name, but none like, what is it? FPN, favorite psychologist of Nick. There you go.
Add that to my CV.
Yeah, put it on your LinkedIn profile. You're going to be rich. So anyways, I was thinking about this as well, man, like how much we've grown since you came on in episode 47. Like, thank you. Like we really appreciate you coming on our podcast because I couldn't even look back at the statistics. It wouldn't let me go back that far to see how many people listen compared to now.
3.
But you know, it was my mom.
All 3 of us. Yeah. That was it.
It was a little more, but not that much. So it's awesome to just have you on as we grow. Okay, so why are we having Dr. Robi on? Well, Garrett and I just finished up on Thursday talking about dismantling the lie that we love, which is authentic self, which is just basically an excuse for like, I can do what I want and everybody just needs to agree with me and not challenge me.
We talked about some of the, like there's a measure of truth to that.
Right.
Like, but then there was the part where you're getting into the ability to just say that how I feel is the truth.
Right. And believe it or not, that's not the case. So,
really?
Yeah, I know that's probably shocking for you. So
it allows you to have zero accountability.
Yeah. And what we ultimately got to is identity. And one of the big piece of identity is your beliefs. And we talk about beliefs about as much as anything. I mean, I think if you had a heat map, it would be beliefs, purpose, the word of God. Like these are the things that we always talk about. As a matter of fact, in our mindset mastery course, where we literally give people mental tools, we changed a little bit about how we teach it a few months ago, or it's sometime this year, because we realized in order for a lot of the tools that we teach you, if you don't have the right beliefs, you're gonna be like, oh, that's cool for them. And so
even in a topic like time management, we start with these are the beliefs that you must have.
Yeah.
Our definition of belief, things you know are true but can't prove, and scientifically prove, verifiable, demonstratable, repeatable. You can have a lot of evidence for those things, but this is what you have to stand on to walk in this.
Right. And I thought, well, who better to have on to actually talk about how those beliefs are formed, the limiting ones, discovering them, how to change them. I was like, man, you just happened to be in town, and
the expert.
You and I were having a conversation, and you're like, why don't we just do this on a podcast? And I was like this weekend, or when you come back next? He's like, sure, let's go this week. And I'm like, yes. So I just text G. I was like, I didn't expect you to put your hand up for another one, because you've got plenty going on.
Well, I didn't expect you to say 6 a.m. either, but here we are.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. You volunteered first, and then I told you what was going to happen. That's how all great things happen. But yeah, we're so big on beliefs, because like we said in Mindset Mastery, we define your beliefs, or your mindset basically comprises of your beliefs, your desires, and your understanding. And so Garrett gave our definition, which was something you know to be true but can't prove. But you gave me a definition that I've been literally thinking about since you said it to me on Friday. I've got it written down. Can you share with the listeners your beliefs definition?
Sure. The Proverbs says that the heart is the seat of emotion. So when a thought, which takes place largely in our head, migrates south and becomes infused with emotion, it becomes your philosophy. So the word philosophy comes from the Greek word phileo, which means love. So in its most simple definition, your philosophy is to be in love with what you know. So a thought is easily changeable. If you've got a thought and I tell you some new information, you go, oh, wow. And now you've got a new thought, or an adjusted or adapted thought. But a belief that's infused with emotion is harder to change, because, well, I've got emotion attached to this. And so it's like a big anchor that's weighing down, and it's harder to drive the ship forward when you've got this big ball and chain of emotion tagging along with you. And so that's why it's very dangerous to follow our feelings, because there's emotion involved and feelings are so faulty. But if you inform your feelings through a dynamic belief system, then the beautiful thing is your feelings will follow.
Yeah, no, so there's so much I want to get into there, because you said that really nicely and with a wonderful accent and well-spoken as always. And I'm like, okay, because so what you said it when we were having coffee, you said beliefs are a thought or an idea that has been infused with emotion, which is what you just said in different words.
Yeah.
And so when we say it's something you know to be true but can't prove, I don't think there's a contradiction in those. I think what you uncover is a lot about how they're formed, right? Because a lot of the beliefs that we give to people, beliefs
that makes me think that on what you're saying there of how they're formed. I feel like a lot of the way that we try to help people inform and create a belief is through information. Like, you need to have this understanding, but what that sounds like, and correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Robbie, but what that sounds like is most people's beliefs start with an experience.
Yeah. Yeah, because that's where I started. That's where I started going. I mean, well, it's our man, Tony Robbins. He says a belief is a poor substitute for an experience. And I remember when he said that.
When you read the Bible, which is where we try to develop a lot of our beliefs from, that's not an experience when you read it, but we're saying this is where your beliefs should come from.
Right.
And so you're put in this position of trying to counter an experience-based belief with an information-based belief.
Yeah, but so here's what's so interesting about this, because now when I start to think about, okay, how beliefs are formed, because I hear what you're saying, G, and that's why I love that we do the fire starter, because for a lot of people, when they, a fire starter is our New Year's Day polar plunge that we do at 6:30 a.m.
I've seen.
Shame you're not here. If you're ever out here on New Year's, we're going to rope you in.
He's helping save some people's lives.
Yeah, he's changing the world elsewhere.
Yeah.
But what I love about that is we tell people hey, you're capable, you can do all these things. And to your point, when you hit the water, your philosophy gets a real
wake-up call.
It's the litmus test. How much do you really believe that? Because your body starts shivering, pain starts jumping in. How much do you believe you're an overcomer? How much do you believe that you can, think your way into things and you have a strong mindset? It's really an interesting thing. But I started thinking about so if it's something that's infused with emotion, obviously when you're a kid, a lot of your beliefs are going to be formed. But there was this thing that happened years ago with Ray Rice. I know you're a big American football fan, Dr. Robbie. Like, just, you love it.
Bring it on.
I was just thinking about that yesterday as he gave the football analogy in Mighty Men. I was like, Dr. Robbie had to learn football to speak to Americans.
Yeah, for real. But
good on you.
But think about this where we have, because in America, and I know it's in Australia as well, like you're really big on like identity politics and things like that are being shaped. And you have people who have really strong, what I'll say are beliefs, because they are doing some wild things based on these beliefs. And so I started thinking, I was like, how do you get formed a belief that like you can change your gender or something that's like what I would consider absolutely absurd? And so I started thinking, okay, that's an extreme example. Let's dial it down a little bit smaller to something that also surprised me, where I saw something infused with emotion. So I'll tell you why I was bringing up American football. So years ago, and this is, I don't remember the years. There's a football player named Ray Rice in the NFL. And a video came out of him dragging his wife out of an elevator, a lift, as you would say.
Weren't supposed to see that.
Yeah, well, she was unconscious, right? So he got, I think it was a 2-game suspension for that, right? Like, because you can't behave that way.
Wow.
Well, so then somebody
Only 2.
Well, yeah, but you say that because we all know what happened. Like, she didn't trip and fall, right? But like then what happens? The video comes out. Some TMZ or whatever goes in, finds the video, and released the video of him punching her in the face. Okay, like he literally hooked his wife in the face and knocked her out. It was awful. What do you think happened? Everyone lost their mind. He got suspended for the whole year. I don't think he ever came back. I would have to check, and I'm using this as the example because the point isn't what his suspension or his punishment was. It was that everybody saw him dragging his wife out, and he got a suspension, and people were upset about it. But once they saw it, now it's an emotion. And I'm bringing this up to show how beliefs are formed because I thought it always surprised me because I was like, what do you think happened in there? Like I said, like she didn't like, oh, whoops, I just, I got seasick and fell down. You knew something happened, but once you saw it, it was changed.
When my wife, randomly goes unconscious, I drag her around by her hair.
Right. Which is what he did. It was really bad.
Yeah, that's game over.
Right. But do you think, so like the reason I'm bringing this up is because do you feel like people, just because we have these devices in our hands all the time, how deeply seated can beliefs start to become from like echo chambers and algorithms? And because what I want on this episode for people listening, I'm hoping people start to realize the power of what they put in and how they're actually developing their beliefs, as well as how to uncover some of them. So I don't know if I'm reading this right with the Ray Rice example, but is that a thing?
There's multiple layers of complexity when it comes to belief because you've got the conscious dynamic and then you've got the subconscious, and there's theories out there that say 90 to 95% of everything we do is driven by the subconscious.
Yeah.
That it's all in these automatic processes, and so it's almost like hardware and software. And so it doesn't matter what the hardware is. If you've got a particular program running in the background, you're going to have autocorrect. So you might consciously type in a particular word, but if the autocorrect program is running in the background, it's going to modify that word, and all of a sudden you're on a different trajectory.
Right.
But I like the way that ancient scriptures put it when it talks about belief in your heart. If a person believes in their heart and confesses with their mouth, that he is Lord, then wow, that's a different dynamic. Or as a person thinks in their heart, so they become. Now, what's the heart got to do with thinking? Well, it might surprise you to know that the heart has 10 to 40 million neurons, which are nerve cells or brain cells. And the head, the brain, has its own heartbeat. In other words, the heart and the head share each other's properties. So if you hook up an EEG...
I've never heard the heartbeat in the brain.
Yeah.
Talk about that really quick.
So if you do an EEG and an ECG and an electrocardio and an electroencephalogram, so there's wire your brain and wire your heart, you'll have 2 different beats. And so the beat in the brain is called the sensory motor rhythm. Your brain is operating or beating, it's running to its own basic drum. And your heart has its own brain cells. And so there's this intimate connection between the two. And so if you have a heart transplant, you're not just transplanting an organ, you're transplanting memories as well. And so there's interesting research now coming to show that there's more going on than what we realize. And so as a thought becomes infused with the seed of emotion, the heart.
Is that like a person, for example, has a heart transplant. It's like, I've never been an anxious person before. Why am I so anxious now?
Yes, but even more cool than that. So there have been scenarios whereby, for example, a ballerina had the heart of a motocross guy who had an unfortunate spill on his motorbike.
Great combination.
This is a movie script waiting to happen.
And he loved KFC and beer. And all of a sudden, this ballerina developed an appetite for KFC and beer. But even better than that is the memories that go along with that. So a young girl was murdered, and her heart was transplanted to somebody else, and the new recipient of the heart was able to help work with the police to tell them and inform them not only where the murder took place, where the murder weapon was, but indeed who indeed was the murderer.
That's
kidding.
nuts.
No.
That's nuts.
There's more going on here than what we realize.
I mean, I believe it. That's just a crazy story.
You should never transplant your heart, G.
No.
Whoever got
I
that.
have to take that one to the grave with me.
That would not be. That is wild. And how researched? Like, how new is this?
They're anecdotal stories, of course, but there's a bunch out there. Like it's not just a one or two, and so it's interesting research that obviously is still ongoing. But it just goes to show there's more going on here than what we realize.
So for those of you who are not well versed in science, anecdotal means that it's not widely accepted yet. These are.
It's somebody's experience.
Right.
It wasn't a scientific report.
It's an N=1 study. So it's one participant that we're investigating.
Right.
So that's what we're looking at.
Yeah. When I said for those of you who are not versed in science, I was talking about myself, but I was just trying to like disguise it so that the listeners wouldn't feel bad. Anyways. Okay. Okay. So going back to this. Okay. So the heart and the head. So I mean, I guess the obvious answer is, so I mean, if you're saying that it's infused with emotion, what are the most common ways that beliefs are formed?
Through experiences. So when you have an experience, an encounter, so it's a little bit like what we were saying before. If a person believes in their heart and confesses with their mouth, but wait, hang on, even the devil believes in God and it doesn't do him any good. So it's not an academic religiosity. Oh, I read the Bible and therefore I've come to the conclusion that he must exist.
Right.
No, wait. If you believe in your heart, you have had an encounter with him. You've developed a relationship. There's a heart connection going on here. And so that relational dynamic is, hey, you invited me over to your house this morning. And so I've got a relationship with you. There's something going on. This is our third podcast. Hey, we're in a relationship here. There's a dynamic here. We actually know each other. We're hanging out with each other. There's a belief in my heart that I'm forming about you guys as we develop that level of intimacy, that we get to see our strengths and weaknesses and still embrace and celebrate each other anyway. Well, there's something else that's taking place that's deeper than just a thought. And because it's becoming now infused with emotion, if somebody was to say, well, no, Nick is like this and Garrett's like this, I'm like, hang on, no, wait just a second.
Right.
I've got certain belief systems now that have developed around these particular individuals because I've experienced them.
Man, so what's so wild about that, as you're saying this, is for everybody out there listening, right now you get to have a large say in not even large say, you get to have this say in who you're around. Regardless of what you say, you get to pick who you're around and largely what you do. When you're a kid, you have zero input. You get taken everywhere and you get all these experiences, which means that you basically arrive, if I could like make this overly simple, you arrive probably sometime in your 20s and wake up and go, I've got this playing field of all these things I believe. You now have to, it's your responsibility to assess what's true and what's not. That is and I guess that's why psychology exists, because there's so many people that need help. Am I reading that right?
Yeah, to a degree, sure. But it doesn't necessarily mean that's fixed for you.
Yes.
So it's malleable, it's moldable. And so, yeah, we start out with a set of ideas and beliefs that have been, programmed or reinforced by those who have been caring for us. So they transfer their ideas to us. And then we go out and, wait for it, experience the world.
Right.
And through those experiences, our beliefs will slowly be molded and shaped into the new individual that we become.
So the majority of the people listening to this podcast, after they've been here for 10 episodes, 20 episodes, what they realize is they have a lot of beliefs that need to change.
Yeah, for sure.
And we talk about that. We try to help them with that. We tell them these are some of the beliefs you need to have to go on these specific journeys. But what Nick has dealt with, what I've dealt with, and this is where I think you could be so instructive today, Dr. Robi, is people, I have these lived beliefs. I have these beliefs I've had for decades. And now I know I want to have these beliefs, and I believe these beliefs are the right ones to have. but when I try to walk in them, I keep reverting back to some of my old beliefs. How do you help this person?
If we're embarking upon a journey of change, we always have to examine our degree of motivation. Why? Why are you changing? And all too often, we want to avoid pain. I don't like something in my life anymore. I was joking yesterday. We're at Mighty Men, and
Yes.
and I
love when
say,
you come to Mighty Men.
I thank God for this body of steel that God has given me. And I looked at Garrett. I'm like, well, yeah, he might have a 6-pack, but I have a family pack.
Yeah.
and so I go, hang on, I don't actually want a family pack. I'd like to actually become a little bit more like Garrett. And so what could I do? But the motivation that drives me is because of something I don't want. I don't want this big fat bloke belly anymore. And because it's something I don't want, we call it negative motivation. And negative motivation is good because it gets you to the starting line, but it almost never helps you cross the finishing line.
That's right.
In order for that to take place, I need a renewing of my mind. I need to transform what I think and what my heart believes. So in other words, thought infused with emotion, my motivation needs to be positive. I need to be asking the question, so what do I want?
Yeah.
Can it create a vision for that future to be able to say, this is something I'm going to pursue, as opposed to I'm running away or wanting to change something that I don't like.
Yeah. Man, it's what I love about having you on here. And I always say this to Garrett. It's so funny to me how many things, because I'm not even an amateur psychologist. I always feel embarrassed talking to you about like my views, because I like reading about psychology, but like you've like helped millions of people in the world. So it's like talking to Michael Jordan about how I like to go play basketball. It's not really that relevant. But you'll say things on here, and I'm always like, man, like I say to Garrett all the time, I'm like, dude, you intuitively do and say things that then psychology comes along and goes like, yeah. And you'll say it in your own way, but it's different. I always find that so interesting, because we talk about all the time how like pain and pleasure are very temporary fuel sources, but purpose is eternal fuel.
Come on.
And when you have purpose, you'll run forever, right? But when you have pain or pleasure, you'll run until you get enough, either till you get far enough away from the pain or till you get enough pleasure that you don't want it anymore.
And it's not to dismiss it. There's a big case to be had. I mean, we actually are more motivated by the removal of pain than we are the pursuit of pleasure.
Yeah. Dang it.
And you can't say I didn't study psychology. I didn't go to school beyond high school, but I do reference one of the things I learned in the military is the basics. The basics like rule everything. And one of the basics of psychology that we reference all the time is Maslow's hierarchy, which is exactly what Dr. Robi's talking about. Yep. You're not going to achieve greatness running from failure. You can run from failure and it'll get you down the road, but at some point you have to make that transition. And that's really what so much of our podcast is for a lot of people, of making a belief transition, making a mindset transition in their life, where it's like, I want what you guys are talking about, and what I've used in the past I've realized isn't going to get me there.
Yeah. So if I wanted to now have new beliefs, right? Like, first of all, you have to discover your own, or do you like, because it sounds like if I was like, man, I really want to believe, like I want to be tougher or whatever.
Yeah.
You need to go out and do some difficult things, right? Because you have to give yourself reference experiences. Like, we're getting ready to run a 50 miler in March. Now, we've done a 100 miler. We attempted it twice and we finished it once. And that was like, for me, reset my definition of hard. So like, I've gone through a bunch of stuff since then. I'm like, and it's not, honestly, it's not like, when I think about the 50 miler, I'm not being disrespectful to it, because I know it's it doesn't change. It's 50 miles. But in my head, it's so much less. I'm like, well, it's not 100.
The superpower of perspective.
And it's wild. So, but I'm saying this because I've experienced this myself, about how much my own beliefs have changed and all these things. But for people who are listening that maybe don't have a Navy SEAL to like start being like, hey, we should go do this. Am I reading this right? Like, they need to go out and put themselves in these positions. Is that correct?
Well, I think it starts with the thought of, what do we actually want? Why are we doing this? When am I going to actually do this? And then how? So those 4 questions, starting with the what, is basically laying down on the table, here is the pursuit, or this is what I want to change, or this is what I want to improve or enhance, or, go after. I'm going to run 100 miles or whatever it might be. But hang on, why? And let's establish that, because the why is the fuel. If you have the why behind what you do, you'll be able to overcome any obstacle that's in your way if it's the right why. And it's, once again, as we said, from a positive motivational perspective. This is what I want as opposed to this is what I don't want. Because in psychology, we know you always get more of what you focus on. So if you always focus on what you don't want, you'll simply get more of what you don't want.
Right.
So in the renewing of our mind comes transformation. And now that I've got 100% positive perspective, this is the vision, this is the target, this is what I'm going after. Okay, so when? When are you going to start?
Yeah.
Not just as, well, I'm going to do it in the new year. Well, hang on. Why is it that 90% of our New Year's resolutions, fall flat to the floor within the first couple of weeks? What makes me go the distance? And so when I put my when down and I've got a target date of whether I'm starting or finishing, like I'm going to finish this race or complete this target of losing an X amount of kilos or putting on or stacking, whatever it might be, then I have to ultimately ask the question, how?
Yes.
And so the when is a game changer, because before that it's just wishful thinking, and now my target date has just made this a potential reality. But how? And all too often we start with the how.
Yeah.
But the how, it's the wrong kind of how. We're like, how am I going to do this? Wrong question. If you've got the first 3 questions down pat, this is what I'm going to do, this is why I'm going to do it, and this is when I'm going to start or complete this, the how kind of takes care of itself. So we flip the how and become, how will I know when I have accomplished this?
Right.
And so we renew our mind once again and create a vision. And if you can really use all of your senses to encapsulate this in your mind and put yourself, take a Polaroid and really, what do you see in that photo that you've crossed the finishing line? Like who else is in the photo? Now press that little transparent, triangle on the photo and make the photo come to life. Like turn it into a video. Yeah. What can you hear? What can you feel? Can you feel the wind against your face? Like if you can really conceive it, you can achieve it, because the brain does not know the difference between that which is imagined and that which is real.
Yeah.
What's so funny is if you overgeneralize the Bible, this is the exact same instruction that the Bible gives. If you read the word and you have a desire to follow God, Scripture says man knows a man by his fruit. Yeah. And many people, they live their life of chasing fruit, of chasing man's approval. But if what the word says is that the Lord weighs the heart. He looks at something we talk about on this show all the time. God cares way more about why you do what you do than what you do. And if you'll pursue it from the why perspective, what Dr. Robi's saying is the change will come. Yeah. If you'll know why you're changing, then the change that you want to see will come. If you'll live a life of saying, God, I care way more about pleasing you and you being proud of why I'm doing what I'm doing than actually the fruit that comes from it, you will walk right into practical growth. And to just operationalize what Dr. Robi is saying is, instead of trying to force yourself into change, just having that very simple foundation of the purpose. Yeah. And so the next time you go to change, it's like a scene from one of my favorite movies. You've been down that road before. Yeah. When you get faced with the challenge and the difficulty of, change is really hard, you just have to remind yourself of, do I want more of what I've had? Right.
I love so much what you said, because right now we just released, we did this thing called the Purpose Playbook that we released maybe a week ago or 2 weeks ago.
Come on.
And what it is ultimately is you come out with goals for the year but what we realized, because we did it in person with people for 2 years, and what we realized is what you just said. People don't need as much help with the goals as much as they do with the purpose behind them. So what we spent all our time doing with these people in person was stirring up the belief and potential, casting vision, understand how purpose works. And then we do some practical things like, hey, here's how your life is in order right now. You need to understand priorities and all that sort of stuff. And then you can actually set goals.
Brilliant.
And my frame on goal setting kind of was influenced by the military, from just being a part of some much bigger campaigns that I was not the leader of, but experienced, where you get into the campaign, it's like, okay, we're going to further the campaign by killing bad guys. But there comes a point where killing more bad guys does not further the campaign. And that's what I felt like. Then that's how most people do their goals. Like, oh, it'd be good if I made more money. It'd be good if I got in better shape. And that's the equivalent of killing bad guys. But you have to zoom out and be like, what is the actual mission that we're on?
Brilliant.
Yeah. And so the Purpose Playbook is basically us walking them through that step by step, where we do all the groundwork with them so that they can finally get to the place where it's like, okay, now you're ready to actually set some goals that are so tied to something eternal that you're like, I must do this. If I don't do this, it's like, and so anyways, we did it in person with people, 20 people or 25 people each year for the past 2 years. And then this year we're like, let's just put it into a digital form and get it to as many people as possible. So right now that's out and it's awesome. So
You know why I
fun.
like that? Because it's not just behavioral modification.
No, we're
this
not
right
interested.
here, you're talking life transformation.
Yeah.
And that starts with the renewing of the mind.
Yeah.
How awesome is
Yeah,
that?
and that's what we want. So I'd be remiss to not say www.theimpossible.life/purpose if you want to get that. That wasn't even planned. So hey, praise the Lord. It's almost like what we're doing is rooted in foundational truth. You know, so going back to this, because I want to talk about how you define a limiting belief and then how you would go about discovering them. But before we do, you touched on it. And what I love about you, Dr. Robbie, we did an episode a few weeks ago about how science is always catching up to what God says. And I love because you know so much of the science and like you're also a man of God. Like you are a man whose heart is like wholly after God. We've had a lot of great conversations. I'm very grateful for our friendship that you've got to, we've got to share.
Dr. Robbie would have been a great guest for that episode.
Oh,
he's an even better guest for this episode.
Dr. Robbie would be a great, if he was just
pretty
if
much
he just lived here, we could just be like, yo, come on here, be the third member. And, you'd always add. But it was, what I love about what you said, because you're talking so much about, I think what humanity wants to do is they want to be like, okay, I'm going to go engineer this belief. I'm going to go out and have 5 hard runs. I'm going to tell myself this, and then I'm going to have a new belief. And it's not how it works. But what we have is we have this supernatural God that's beyond our comprehension, that doesn't fit into our box, and that can move and create and change beliefs in a moment. Because when you experience the presence of God, you talk about having a thought or an idea that's infused with an experience, an emotional experience. When you encounter the presence of God, we were talking about this. All you can do is just go, holy, like just put your hands up, because the presence of God, the actual weight of the presence of God is so overwhelming. And so we have this like Christians, people who follow Christ have this like supernatural power available to them to get into the presence of God and to have themselves, like we said, transformed by the renewing of their mind. Nothing's going to renew your mind faster than being in the presence of the awesome God that we serve. And so I love that we, like, as you're saying this, I'm just like, man, because I know in my own walk, like God's been just drawing me into just spending time in prayer, just sitting before him, praying in tongues, just worshiping him. And I'll feel the presence of God come in. And it's when a lot of the greatest ideas or peace or love or just things, there's just a healing that happens that I can't go, well, yeah, and then I realized this, and then 5 steps. It was just like, no, I got in the presence. It's like all you had to do is touch Jesus and things changed. And so I love that we have that.
I think that a lot of people who are listening to this might be hearing you talk and going, well, I want that, but I don't have that. Like, how do I get that? Like, is it? And so once again, it becomes a target or a goal, or is there a 5-step, checklist that I can do so I too can, touch or have the encounter with? And you've gone on a journey with God, so that it wasn't just pressing a button and say, okay, God, enter into the door. I open the door. Now come on in. And so that journey of intimacy, developing that relationship, that's something special that I think a lot of people listening would go, so how do I get that?
Well, those who seek him must believe that he is, aka that he exists, and that he's a rewarder of those who diligently seek him. I've always
You'll find me, you'll seek me, and you'll find me when you seek me with all your heart.
He tells us. So what does all your, this is one of the things, and Garrett, this is where you've been such a great unlock and lid lifter for me. And I hope for this is the time of year where Spotify does their Wrapped. So I'm talking to so many listeners right now through our DMs. And I love it, by the way. So thank you all for all your messages. And it's amazing to see how many minutes you guys listen to. Shout out to Morgan Wotherspoon, who's listened to 13,000 minutes. He's the top listener.
I was going to say, did we get for an artist that I listened to that's like an obscure electronic artist, I was in there 0.01%, and then it gave me my leaderboard. Like I was number 1,542 for this obscure electronic artist. Do we get that for ours? Like, do we know our leaderboard?
We don't know who our number one is, but we know that we were we were top for 6,700 people on Spotify.
If you are number one and you're listening to this, I would assume you'd have to be listening to this if you're number one. We'd love to know who you are and have something for you.
We would, but going back to why I was bringing that up, so we're getting all this feedback, and what we would hope that we would stir in people is that you would exactly have that belief of like, man, there's a living God that I can know, that I can press in, and that part of that, like, you'll seek me with all your heart. Like this is where I was saying Garrett was a great lid lifter for me, was, I got to be around a guy personally who, like, I thought like level 10 was like, yeah, man, like this is pretty hardcore. And then I meet this guy, he's like, oh, that's like level 2, bro. And I'm like, what? And he's like, yeah, we're going to go do this. And there was so many times, I mean, like 4:30 in the morning pool workouts, Like we're in the middle of something and I think it's really hard and Garrett's like smiling and I'm like, what who is this guy? But like, I've always, this is a great NLP belief is like, if somebody else can do it, like, so can you. And so I never looked at Garrett and was like, oh, he's untouchable. Like he's just a super powered guy. I just watched him like get in chaotic situations and kind of smile his way through it. And I'm like, okay, he knows something I don't. I just got to discover that. And so like being around that has been a blessing for me. And that's the basis of this podcast is I want as many people as possible to hopefully have their lid lifted. And now we're saying, like you said, so I'm using that as a microcosm of like, hopefully the people listening to this are starting to wake up and realize there's a living God that you need to seek with all your heart. Well, what's all your heart? Your definition of all your heart is starting to change because it's not like, 15-minute proverb of the day. Like, I hope you do that. And like, I'm not knocking that, but that's like the appetizer, maybe. It's like you having a snack at home before you go to the restaurant, right? Like to read just a proverb, like to seek God with all your heart is so much more. You're smiling. Do you want to?
Well, I'm recognizing there's a flip side as well.
Okay.
So yeah, you can see somebody else do it and it lifts the lid, but you can also see others not being able to do something because of the community that you're hanging around, and you develop a limiting belief that that's as high as I can jump.
Yes.
That's as far as I can go because, well, that's just the way it is. In fact, my parents before me and my aunts, that's all we were able. And so now, well, you can't break a 4-minute mile. Like it's just, that's not humanly possible. And so there are these limiting beliefs as well, and we need a revolution through revelation in order to break through.
Okay, so how do you, and you're referencing Sir Roger Bannister, who was the first guy to break the 4-minute mile, who's like he's on my personal board of advisors in my head. I love his story so much because after he did it, I think it was like in the first year after he did it, 36 other people did it.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, that's weird. Did they have a breakthrough in science?
Because all the newspapers said it can't be done.
Exactly.
And there are certain types of people who just don't hear that or hear that signal way less than other people.
Yeah. I mean, there was a great philosopher who said,
like, was Sir Roger Bannister genetically, physiologically the greatest runner of his time? I would highly, highly, highly doubt that.
Right.
His ability to break the 4-minute mile had so much more to do with his mindset than his.
Started in his head.
Yeah. I mean, there's a great philosopher that says.
Then I don't know the data, but I imagine in that next 5 years, there was someone who ran it faster than Roger ever did for the rest of his life.
Yeah. Well, like I said, in the first year, 36 other people broke it and he fell down the charts for sure because he broke it barely. But, Batman was the one who said it's only impossible till someone does it, and he was a great philosopher. So it's, we all know.
But it's like that research with the fleas. Like bring that research
okay,
up.
so
Like
I was actually going to bring that up because I'm glad you said it because I do want you to define it a little bit more. So and this, of course, there's this story that Steve Harvey, of all people, tells. And our friend Kenny, was at coffee with us. So shout out to Kenny. Love you.
But Steve Harvey's life is a story of belief.
Right. Well, I don't know a lot about his story. But he talks about they did this thing with fleas. Fleas can jump 36 inches. And so what they did was they put them in a jar and put a lid on it. So they would jump these 36 inches and like it was a 36-inch jar. They'd hit the lid. That obviously hurts. After enough times hitting the lid, they stopped jumping 36 inches. They would jump just below it. Well, then after that, they took the lid off to see what would happen. None of them jumped out of the jar. And then what's even crazier is they had kids because fleas, they have kids a lot faster than we do. Their kids didn't even jump that high. Now, I would be remiss because I don't want to share information that's not accurate on here. I looked up the accuracy of this, and it's not like, oh, that's completely made up. But there's etymologists and all these people are like, well, we've had a little bit of conflicting research. But the actual story and the understanding of it.
Scientists, I wouldn't say scientists in general, but many scientists struggle with the concept of belief.
Right.
Because data and faith are on a spectrum where people... I'm all about the data, I'm all about the numbers, and they're looking for data that is contrary to the belief, where at least we can say for us sitting at this table, we live with a different source of truth. We live with a faith perspective, and then we see these things that confirm that.
Yeah, so good. So the flea story, obviously, that is like limiting belief laid out so nice and clear for us, right? Should we just wrap it up and just say, hey, don't do that? but you loved that when you heard that.
It's great. And imagine if you were to extract one of those fleas and put them in a community of fleas that jump higher.
Yes.
Then all of a sudden the mindset shifts. It's like, wait, what?
Yeah.
You're able to do, okay, so what if I was to give this a go? And all of a sudden we break through this invisible barrier and the limiting belief starts to shift, and I have a new belief. And I think that's our relationship with God. It's quantum physics. Like we all think, well, within the realm of physics, time, space, and matter, that's as well. Quantum physics throws all that out the window.
Yes, right.
The rules no longer apply. And if Jesus says, hey, everything I did, you can do, and even more. Whoa, hang on, what? Now I need to see this. Like how do I actually develop a belief that that's actually possible through faith? And any scientist, as you were saying, Garrett, who says, no, I only operate by facts. I believe only things that can be proven. Well, that's not what science does. Science poses a theory that comes from an idea. And so we test the hypothesis. And when we report the data, we say, based on the evidence, it suggests that this may be the case, and all good science leaves room for another possible alternative. Science doesn't prove anything. We posit theories, gather data to support or reject hypotheses.
To develop a worldview that's based only off of science, that is not science, that's theology.
That's faith.
Right? Like literally you're saying, I will only live by what I can see. Many scientists, that is what they live by. They're saying, like, if I can't see it, I won't live by it. That's a theology. That's not a science.
Yeah, man. So the flea story and what you just said there is, it's amazing because what you intimated, and I'm like, I feel like it's always my job to extract things and hopefully make them as plain as possible so other people can grasp them. You're basically saying, like, because what you said straight away was like, imagine if we took that flea and put it around a bunch of other fleas who could jump more than 36 inches.
The interesting part of that study would be how many fleas, right? If you put one flea next to the flea that's limited, maybe it might not jump. Like, how many other fleas does it have to see jumping double its height before it finally says, oh, I guess I can probably do that too.
And guess what? We're not fleas. We're men. So like, I don't take my cues from fleas. But I thought what was interesting, because I'm always interested in, okay, we've uncovered a problem. We all have limiting beliefs. And I mean, I want to hear your definition of limiting beliefs, but before you get there, you kind of already gave us the answer, because like the natural thing is like, well, how do I change it? And what you recommended there was, imagine if you put it around another community, aka who are you spending your time with? Yeah. Am I reading that correctly? Yeah,
to a degree. And not that it's not the whole story, but there is something to be said for the power of community. So it's a little bit like the rat park studies from the 1970s in Canada, where they took drug addicted rats, fully drug addicted, heroin, addicted, and then placed them into a community of rats who were drug free. And even when they were presented with the opportunity to take heroin, they would actively avoid it, like the rest of the rats in the community. And so what is it that creates community?
I've not heard that study before. That's really cool.
Yeah. So it's, there's power in, there's safety in numbers, but it has to be the right kind of community, because if you're just hanging out with fellow drug addicts, well, that's only going to reinforce your addiction. So begs the question, who are you hanging out with? Because it might influence what you believe.
Man, yeah. And it's what we talk about is what we're always going to talk about. Like Pastor Keith says. Okay, so we've talked about limiting beliefs. Do you have a definition that like is ready in your head for if someone said like, what's a limiting belief? Do you have a ready answer?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, human being. So we all have these limiting beliefs. And the beauty of this conversation is, how do I lift the lid off of my jar? And the thing is, the fleas don't know. We don't know what our limiting beliefs, are. Well, that's just what you can do, right? Like surely, and so we just have these default conclusions that we've formed, and we don't think it's a limiting belief. We just, well, that's the conclusion. So when we experience something, by whether it be hanging out with other people or going on a journey, an adventure with God, and He reveals, I look at the life of Peter, this guy who was hanging out with the main man himself, Jesus. Like, this guy is witnessing miracles. He's doing all sorts of different things, and he even participated in miracles. Like, he's like, Jesus, is that you walking on the water?
Yeah.
If it is, like, command me to come on out, and sure, come on down. And so Peter walks on the freaking water. I mean, this is amazing. And then he starts sinking. The point being, you can be standing right in front of Jesus and still be sinking in your life. It's not until you get a revelation of who He really is that things starts to change. And that's what ultimately happened in the end of the story. He asks his disciples, who do people say that I am? And Peter says, well, you're the Christ. You're the Son of God. You're the one we've been waiting for. You're the Messiah. Yeah. And he's like, flesh and blood didn't reveal that to you. Your experiences alone didn't help you form that belief. It was a revelation from the throne room above. The Father himself has revealed that to you. So our community, our experiences, they are good, but they only take us so far. At the end of the day, we also need a revelation.
Yeah, man. What's so fascinating to about that, you saying that, because I've thought about this stuff a lot. When for the Israelites, if you were a Hebrew, you grew up hearing scripture, going to the synagogue, like your identity was tied to what we would call, religion, if you're cynical.
And just understand this for those of you who are listening, right? Many of you listening are American. If you come from a different culture, it makes even more sense to you. But their beliefs were older to them than what it means to be an American to us, right? We have so much, we have 250 years of history of like, this is the identity and the soul of America. And many of these people are hundreds and hundreds of years into, a set of beliefs and a set of cultural identity.
Yeah, and that's exactly my point. So it actually would be thousands of years by the time that Peter was around. So you've got stories of like, I think it's amazing they talk about Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Like we don't talk about like, Leonardo da Vinci, Michael, like we don't talk about in modern day times, we don't even talk about like Abraham Lincoln gets some mentions here and there because he had a few good quotes that stuck around, but they talk about the patriarchs in such a different way. So to have that revelation of like, hey, wait, this has been throughout our scripture and like God's been talking to people that we know he talked to and he's been hinting and intimating, and now this is the guy. Like, you can make that an intellectual thing, but it wasn't intellectual, right? Because it was only when the Holy Spirit came at Pentecost that they really, the dude who 40 days earlier, was going like, I don't know the guy, is now standing up and boldly proclaiming. And that's what you're saying is like, it's like we can have experiences, we can have community, but until it's like you have the real revelation, aka an actual relationship with God, man, it's like if people can't tell you, oh well, your change is kind of gradual, like it's radical, right? Whenever you actually know God like that.
Yeah, and I think what you guys were saying before about when you seek, you will find. God is such a good God. He's, the scientist quote is, if God exists, then why did he go to such lengths to hide himself? Well, are you been looking? Like, just open your eyes, look around half a second, and when you authentically seek.
But seek me with all your heart. Don't expect him to reveal himself to you.
That's it. And because he loves us and longs to be in a relationship with us, in fact, he'd do anything, including sending his own son. Like he would love the idea of somebody going, oh, really authentically, God, I want to know you. And when that takes place, he just loves to reveal himself.
Yeah.
And I think it's the part that goes with that, not just the want to know you, but be willing to accept what will come from knowing him. Because one of the stories in the Bible that is so revelational to me, and this is why so many people I feel like deny Christ, is the last time Jesus is in the temple. Last time he's in the temple, the Pharisees say, are you the Messiah? He says, I'll answer your question if you'll answer mine. And the question he asked them is John the Baptist a prophet of God? And of course he is, right? Everyone had declared that he's the first prophet in hundreds of years. And if the Pharisees had said, no, John the Baptist isn't a prophet, then they would have been thrown out of the temple for heresy.
Because he was so popular.
Right. John the Baptist had been accepted as a prophet. If they had said yes, then Jesus' response is going to be, well, John the Baptist is a prophet. He declared that I'm the Messiah. So there's your answer. And so what they said back to him was, we don't know. And they knew the answer. The reason they said they don't know is because they didn't like what that answer meant. And you won't find God when you find it. You've already decided, I don't want to accept what if I did find him, it would mean.
Oh, isn't that good? Because that takes limiting beliefs to a whole new level. That's a willful ignorance.
Yeah. It's you're going to get out of limiting beliefs if you really have, like, I would love to get beyond this. Just show me that I can.
Right.
Yeah. You have to have and again, it's a reference back to one of my favorite movies, right? Neo goes through multiple confrontations of a test of, like, are you willing to accept what this means? And each time he is.
Yeah. And that's what's so interesting to me, because there's always, you want to have like, oh, here's exactly what you do to uncover limiting beliefs. But what we're saying is you have to be willing to face the prospect that maybe what you believe is wrong and actually have an objective view of the quote unquote data or whatever, or the experience that's coming back to you of like, maybe what I think about money, maybe what I think about relationships isn't working, aka I'm looking at my life.
If I showed you your mindset has caused all the most painful problems you've had in the last decade, are you willing to swallow that pain, be humble, and confront change?
You like humility, don't you, Dr. Robbie? We talked about this briefly.
Oh man, it's the beginning of everything. Yeah, if you can humble yourself. But what I just heard you say, Garrett, was for the fleas, there's a degree where we go, well, we didn't know that you could jump higher than, what was it, 36 inches?
36 inches, yeah.
And then there's another dynamic that says, well, we know that it's possible, but then that presents a responsibility of us getting out of the jar, and we don't know what's out there.
Yes.
And therefore, no, it's not possible to jump more than 36. And so we become willfully ignorant so as to not have to face the fear of the unknown.
And it's almost like that's why we talk about fear all the time, G, because people are so afraid of the unknown. And until you can embrace uncertainty, you're going to keep getting more of what you got.
When pain governs you, you'll never reach your full potential.
Yeah, man. Well, I feel like we've reached a logical conclusion. Is there anything I'm missing, Dr. R? Is there anything I should have asked you that I did not ask you?
Yeah, you should have asked me more about the report that we did on Garrett's psychological makeup that was undetermined, but there's no time for that, so we'll have to regroup another time.
Well, Dr. Robbie, man, I love having you on here. Thank you so much. Because guess what? Dr. Robbie's going to go off and preach at our church now for the next couple services, and I don't even know what else you have on. So thank you so much for coming in early, just being the massive blessing that you are. Is there anything like people can find you at drrobbie.com? Is that right? Yeah. And you don't really, I mean, you're doing so many things that we're not going to talk about, but like just if you're listening to this and you want to be a blessing to Dr. Robbie, pray for him, because just know that he is advancing the kingdom of God, and he is a man who's all about it. So I will just say, can't wait to have you on here again.
It's been awesome hanging out with you guys. Thanks for the coffee.